Today's podcast is all about wellness action plans and is presented to you by Rachel, that's me, and Andrea.
Hello, that's me.
Who are peer support workers within the Wellbeing Service. So today's podcast will cover what are peer support workers, what is a wellness action plan, and sharing peer support workers' lived experiences of using wellness action plans to support their recovery journeys. We hope that you come away from today's podcast with an understanding of what wellness action plans are and how they can support you in your recovery. So, like I say, my name's Rachel. I'm one of the peer support workers within the Wellbeing Service, and that means I have my own experience of dealing with mental health challenges, and I share my story of recovery and ultimately of hope with other people, with the idea that actually they'll find it useful in their own recovery journeys. And I'll just let Andrea introduce herself as well.
Okay, hi everyone. So I'm Andrea. I'm also a peer support worker with the service, and I've been in the role for just over 4 years now. Like Rachel, I have my own lived experience of living with anxiety and low mood. And as a peer support worker, I use that experience of my recovery to help the people I work with make sense of what's going on for them, and to help them to identify the things that are going to help them to move towards feeling better.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. So today's podcast is going to be looking at wellness action plans. And if you've never heard of the term wellness action plan, I must admit, Andrea, I hadn't heard of a wellness action plan before I started working for Wellbeing. Is that your experience as well?
Yeah, it's something that was totally new to me when we did our peer support work training.
Yeah. So wellness action plans are things that can help us to actively support our own mental health by helping us to plan ahead. They can help us to reflect on what causes us difficulties and to think about what practical steps we can take to support ourselves. So again, by thinking forwards. They can also help us to have conversations with those around us regarding how we are feeling, what helps us, and what things may be causing us difficulties. And if you'd like to find out more information on the background of wellness action plans, how they came about, then if you just do a search on the internet, you will find a vast amount of information. And Andrea, I kind of see my wellness action plan as a guide to me. So, like we've just said, it helps us to have conversations, it helps us to reflect. I kind of find my wellness action plan is a really good thing for me to sort of see, what works for me, what doesn't help me, helps me to have discussions with people. What about you?
Yeah, I find the same, Rachel. To me, they're basically just a set of questions that I answer about myself. So what I'm like when I feel good, what I'm like when I'm not quite so good. So yeah, it's just a reminder to me of what I already know, but actually when I'm using it, I might not be in a place to automatically think of those things.
Yeah, what we're going to do this in today's podcast is really, first of all, have a look at wellness action plans, how they can support us, how we can use them, and then we're going to look at actually, well, how do we do this then? How do we create a wellness action plan? And what we did is we asked the other peer support workers within the Wellbeing Service to have a think about their wellness action plans and how they support them, as all of the peer support workers within the Wellbeing Service have our own action plan. And so it was interesting, Andrea, wasn't it? Sort of asking the other guys how they used them. And a lot of it was sort of thinking about sort of understanding the resources that they have available to manage their mental health. Is that what you sort of found as well?
Yeah. And also they said that they saw the wellness action plan as a resource to support them when a wobble hits, so when they're not feeling quite so good. And almost like it's the instruction like for a first aid kit to them, to remind them, what they're capable of doing, and what they need to do now.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know about you, when so we keep using this word recovery, don't we? I feel like we need to sort of explain that a little bit. So yeah, when we're on this journey, for want of a better word, so you're at the point of unwellness and then you're taking those sort of steps forward, isn't it? I for me sort of see recovery as it's not a straight line. unfortunately, we'd like it to be. I don't know about you, Andrea. I'd love,
I
love it
would.
to be a nice straight line between I feel really rubbish to, oh, I feel better now, or I feel okay now. And in terms of, recovery, particularly mine, is, it's not that straight line. It can go round in circles, it can go forwards, it can go backwards, particularly when, something comes along. It might be something unexpected or something that just sort of comes along and sort of hits us, and we can be in that sort of dip, can't we? So in terms of supporting us on that journey, like that example, it's kind of knowing that you've got the resources there to support you when a wobble hits, or when you're coming into a dip, or when recovery isn't quite going as planned, is to know that actually you've got stuff there and you're capable of using it, and you've used it before, and sort of, what you need to do now. Does that kind of make sense to you?
Yeah. And in terms of resources, I'm just thinking that maybe for the people that are listening, resources sounds like a massive word and something really complicated. But we're really looking at stuff as simple as, does reading a book help me? Or does having, a nice bath away from the family help me? Going for a walk. So resources doesn't need to be anything huge or complicated, does it, Rachel?
Exactly, and we'll find out as we go along that wellness action plans are very unique to the individual. So I can guarantee you, Andrea, what works for me isn't necessarily going to work for you, and that's okay. And actually, that's all part of peer support as well, is actually knowing that, whilst my story and my recovery journey is like this, and this is what I do, it's not necessarily what's going to work for somebody else.
Yeah.
And also, wellness action plans can be a really useful tool to keeping into a routine, keeping in that, remembering the things that help us and keep doing them. Because actually, when we're approaching a wobble, or we're in a wobble, or are in that, that dip, I don't know about you, Andrea, but I forget the things that have worked previously. I forget those tools and techniques, and I can be overwhelmed. So actually, I find a wellness action plan is really, really useful. Like we said at the beginning, for like forward planning, and just to have something, physical that I can look at and go, that's what I did previously. Yes, I'm completely not in the place to remember that now. Brilliant. I will try and put that into action. Yeah. So we also asked the peer support workers how a wellness action plan supports them when they're having a tough time. Because like we've just said, if we're in that wobble and if we're in that dip, then it can be really tough to remember what works, or thinking that anything can help. So Andrea, what did the guys come up with when we asked them that?
Well, they said that it works well on the days when it's difficult for them to think straight. So it reminds them that they've got some helpful strategies. They also said that it gives hope in terms of reminding them, that they've got through tough times before. And I think we all forget that when we're not doing so great. I know I definitely do, Rachel. How am I ever going to get myself out of this? Yeah. And it reminds them of the stuff that's worked before, the tools and techniques.
Yeah, and I think it's also a reminder to us that actually there are natural peaks and flows, aren't they, in terms of this journey from not feeling very well to having that feeling of actually, oh no, things are improving, things are getting better, and kind of reminding us that it is okay not to be okay, and to use self-compassion, and to do those things that are kind of useful. And they also said that knowing that they can update the wellness action plan strategies at any point, so it's not like this is a document that is set in stone, that never changes, that doesn't sort of move with the times, knowing that whenever their situation changes, so for example certain times of the year, people have said, can make things harder, so they use their wellness action plan to plan for that. I know that, second lockdown is coming, Andrea, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's kind of, kind of finding those things that kind of work and do those things. So that's absolutely fine. Was there anything else that you wanted to add there, Andrea?
Yeah, in terms of, we said that if any situation changes, then what you put on your wellness action plan can change. I know also that there have been times where something has really worked for me, but it stops working. So then I can remove that as well. So like you said, it's really flexible. And actually, with the second lockdown coming, there's going to be stuff that we can't do anymore because of the restrictions, not because it doesn't work for us. So it's really taking into account the bigger picture of everything that's going on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like you say, lockdown, restrictions, things that worked previously when restrictions were lifted. It's not necessarily that we need to go, well, I can't do anything, just going to sit at home. It's actually adapting them to the situation that's in front of us, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
So, Andrea, we've talked a lot about wellness action plans, and how they can be used. But what's actually involved in making one? I mean, what's your experience of writing a wellness action plan?
Okay, well, as I think we said before, I'd never come across one before I became a peer support worker and did the training. And, in the beginning, I found it a little bit difficult because what I was actually doing was digging deep inside myself. And it's okay when you can write down the things, what you're like when you're well and the things that are going well. But I found it a little bit harder to actually draw on the things that what life is like when things aren't so great for me.
Yeah.
So it was a difficult exercise to begin with. I don't know about you, but
yeah, I know for me, like you say, it's really interesting at the point you write it, isn't it? So, you could be at a point where you're like, I can't remember, I don't know, and then it's thinking, well, is this the right point to be writing this? And it possibly isn't. And I know for myself, I started it and I thought, this will be fine, I'll just get this done. Took a bit longer than I thought. I had to kind of start it, stop it, and sort of tweak it and sort of add things to it. And I remember taking it into work because, like we've said, this is something peer support workers do as part of our role, and being really, really worried. And my supervisor's going, why are you worried about this? I said, because it's several pages long. And actually, I must be really, really unwell. And he had to point out to me, he said, no, Rachel, it's where you're at in your recovery. So, you're just starting out. So actually, there's going to be more stuff on this. There's probably going to be more stuff that's difficult than other stuff. And he said, that's okay, because as you continue and as you put these things into place, you'll then review it and actually it will become shorter. And actually it did. So yeah, same as you, not heard of one before, not really sure about it, and then kind of realized as I was doing it how useful it would be and actually how it was an ongoing thing. So Andrea, all this talk about wellness action plans, should we actually write one together?
Yeah, let's give it a go, Rachel. Why not?
Okay, so what Andrea and I are going to do now, we're just going to go through the questions that might be on a wellness action plan if you were thinking of producing one. And like we said, if you just Google wellness action plans, or if you look in today's podcast notes, you'll find some stuff that can help you sort of get started. I just wanted to say that you might be listening today and not really be at the point where you're ready to write a wellness action plan. Like Andrea's already said, thinking of these things is actually quite tricky at times. That is absolutely okay. And it's also fine to do like I did, start writing your wellness action plan and have to take a step away from it because you're like, well, I can't think of anything else. So like we said, it's an ongoing document. So or however you do it, actually, and we'll find out later that it doesn't have to be a document, but I'll hold that in there. Kind of feel like I've ruined a surprise there, Andrea.
Spoiled it.
Yeah. I spoiled it, terrible. So Andrea and I are just going to sort of take these questions, kind of like an interview as such. So the first sort of section of a wellness action plan is thinking about becoming an expert about yourself. And I know that sounds a bit strange, but it's actually, putting down on paper these things, having a good think about how things are. So we're going to do it where I'm going to ask Andrea the questions, and Andrea's going to kind of share what is in her wellness action plan. If with you, Andrea?
Yeah, of course, that's fine, Rachel.
Okay, so the first question is, what do you like when you feel good?
Okay, so I'm just going to start off by saying that I had the tendency to overcomplicate this and try and go really in depth. But actually, when I stripped it back a little bit, actually, when I feel good, I smile and laugh a lot more. For one, the obvious things. I'm around people a lot more. I'm more sociable. Um, my eating is generally a lot better, so I'm not comfort eating or reaching for crisps and chocolate. I tend to have, a healthier balance. My sleep is a lot better. I actually get out and do exercise, so I'm more motivated to do things. Um, my self-care is very good, so looking after myself and being kind to myself. And another big one is I'm really good at budgeting my money. So it's not all about me and how I feel, but actually some of the stuff going on around me as well.
Yeah, and you've kind of mentioned a lot of different things there, haven't you?
Yeah.
So things that people might see, which is harder when we're in this kind of lockdown, isn't it? Situation where we're not seeing people. But also, like you say, actually, when I feel good, I can manage stuff. I can budget. I can think straight. So thank you for that, Andrea. So if you've got kind of people around you, whether that's work, family, friends, or what do those people do that supports you in being able to feel that way?
Okay, and this is another one that I could overcomplicate, but purely they're there to listen to me. They make themselves available, and they ask me, is everything okay? And if they kind of hear in my voice that something's not great, they might prompt me a little bit. They know that one of the things that goes wrong for me is maybe that I don't tend to eat regularly when I'm not great. They'll remind me, have you had tea today?
Yeah,
I
so
don't skip lunch. They're just generally, sorry, Rachel, they're just
that's all right.
generally there for me to support me in whatever way they can. Because all my friends and family, they support me differently. They each have a different
Absolutely.
role.
Absolutely. It's different things, isn't it? And again, that can be different for anyone who's listening. It doesn't have to be support in the same way. Sometimes for me, it's actually leaving me be.
Yeah.
Leave me be for a bit. Don't do that. And that's okay. So what can trigger you to feel overwhelmed or stressed?
Okay, now this is quite an easy one for me because it's literally anything that's out of my control. So whether it's say a process change at work, we start to do something differently, or say one of my family members was to get unwell and there's no way that I could help them, or suddenly they started the way I pay my bills changes, so I need to learn a new system there. Anything which sounds quite bad, but anything that I don't know where I am with,
Yeah,
something out of the ordinary.
something that can throw us,
Yeah.
particularly if part of, keeping us well is actually having that routine, is, I pay my bills on so and so day, I do it by this. And then if something comes in, and suddenly changes how we want to do stuff, or how we've managed to do stuff, then yeah, that can be really stressful. And again, this is different for every single person. For one of mine, it's being too hot.
Yeah.
If I don't do well in the summer, unfortunately. So if I'm too hot, immediately, I can be overwhelmed, I can be stressed. So actually, it's a variety of different things, and it really doesn't matter if it overwhelms you and if it stresses you, it goes in your wellness action plan.
Yeah.
So what are your early warning signs of stress? So if things are starting to trigger you, what kind of things should people be aware of?
Okay, well, early warning signs for me, one of the main ones is that I tend to cry a lot. So people will find me weepy. My sleep is one of the things that goes to pot a little bit. So I tend to have bad dreams in the middle of the night.
Me too.
Yeah, I mean, another one, like I mentioned earlier, is eating. So I don't eat regularly. Maybe I'll skip lunch.
Yeah, and
Sorry,
and
Rachel, go on.
yeah, sorry. I don't know about you, Andrea, but it can also be sort of physical warning signs for me. So I have psoriasis. and I
Okay.
have eczema. And an early warning sign for me is actually my psoriasis will come onto my face. So you
Okay.
can actually see it, and yeah, again, different things for different people. I know possibly on my wellness action plan, there might be quite a lot that's written in here because it actually stress affects people in a variety of different ways, so lots of different things can go in there. Thank you for that. So how might your experience of stress and being overwhelmed interfere with your daily life?
Okay. Well, when I become stressed, I tend to overthink things a lot. So, that can interfere in the way that sometimes it takes me longer to do things, or sometimes I need reassurance around certain things. And then obviously, like, as I've mentioned a couple of times earlier, it affects my eating, it affects my sleeping, it affects how I'm connected to people. So maybe I'll tend to withdraw a bit. So my life tends to look very different.
Yep.
All of a sudden, it's almost, if you like, the complete opposite of what I'm like when I'm feeling and looking good.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting way to look at it, isn't it? When you're writing a wellness action plan and you might not be, be able to think, or it might be the other way around. You might be able to fill in, or how does stress affect me? Oh, I can fill that in, ding, 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 done all of that. And that can actually then conversely help you to think about, what am I like when I'm good? Am I the exact opposite of
Yeah,
this? Or is there a tweak?
yeah,
Or looking at it the other way round, if you're at a different point in your recovery where answering what I feel like when I feel good is easy, looking at that, well, how does that change when things aren't doing well? Um, so when you're unwell, is there anything that you forget?
yeah, definitely. So when I'm feeling really low, I forget that actually I've been here before and
Mm,
managed to come out the other side, actually a stronger version of me. I think that when I'm feeling unwell, I forget that I'm loved and I feel very lonely and like I've got to face things on my own.
mm. Yeah,
Um,
I
yeah,
can
and
forget that I can forget that, I'm intelligent. I can actually
yes,
think about stuff because actually when the fog comes down, oh, my ability to think just disappears completely, and I forget that actually, I can do this. So I interrupted Andrew. What was you going to
that's all
say?
right. Yeah, and I think that I just forget everything that I achieve on a daily basis. So
Mm,
the stuff that we the stuff that we forget that we do. So, I've got a full-time job, I'm running a home, I maintain friendships, I retain my family relationships, all
mm.
those things, I've got hobbies, I look after my cat. So yeah, it's all the good stuff that we tend to forget, isn't it?
Absolutely. And thank you for that, Andrea. So, what we're going to do now is look at sort of the second half of our wellness action plan. And that's more about becoming your own therapist. So, it's looking very specifically in terms of, okay, so we've talked about, how this looks like when things are good, how this looks like when we're stressed, what are my triggers, what do I do? This now is actually those practical things that actually, when this occurs, what do we need to be doing? What do we need to think about? And Andrea and I are just going to sort of swap roles for this one. So Andrea is going to be quizzing me. So over to you, Andrea.
Okay, so your first question, Rachel. So for
Mhm.
you to stay well, what are the essential things that you can do in your day-to-day life?
For me, it's having a routine. I
Yeah.
love to-do lists. I do enjoy a good to-do list. So for me, like particularly in terms of work, my day starts with looking at what I need to do and writing a list and just being organized. The list might be very long, but actually I'm kind of, nice and organized. Same for you when you were talking about food and sleep. It's ensuring that, I'm sleeping, however that looks. It's ensuring that I'm eating, because, like you've just said, when I'm unwell, I either don't eat or I live off chocolate and crisps.
Yeah,
So
same.
it's trying as much as I'm able to ensure that I'm having decent food really as much as I'm able to. So yeah, kind of things like that.
Okay, because I suppose for me, this question is about then taking it back to the basics, isn't it? The
Mm.
essential things, like we said before, sleep, eating, exercise, connecting with people. Yeah, okay. So what steps can you take if you do start to feel unwell, Rachel?
So for me, it's stopping and it's taking my foot off the pedal, because I've kind of learned in my recovery that sometimes I don't pay enough attention. So when we were talking about those things that kind of would highlight that you were stressed. So like I said, my psoriasis flaring up on my face. So I've had to learn kind of the hard way, I think, to take my foot off the pedal, like I said, to stop and to assess and to look around. So whilst a to-do list is really helpful, if there's too much on it, for me, I can feel overwhelmed. I don't know the wood for the trees, and I just get I just sort of get stopped. So what I will do is reduce that to 5 items, and it can't be more than 5 items. So I do that. I'd be looking at my environment as well. Is there anything that needs to be tweaking? I know previously in my wellness action plan it would have said working from home. So say if I was finding the office environment just overwhelming, then I would be like, right, I'm going to work from home. That's a bit trickier now in current circumstances, isn't it, Andrew?
Yeah.
Working from home for like months. So for me, it would then be tweaking that and looking at like, okay, do I need to be ensuring that at the end of the day, work stuff is put away? Put it away, don't look at it. It's not there, so I haven't got the temptation to start working, and to really up my self-care, and do those things that are nurturing to me. Sometimes it's just to rest, not do anything, don't take things on, talk, really important. I don't know about you, Andrea, but I find it, like I said, I can find it difficult to acknowledge sometimes that I'm unwell. So I've acknowledged it to myself. Fantastic. I then need to go and talk to someone about it. Need to go speak to, if it's work, be my line manager, talk to friends, talk to colleagues. Kind of stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, talking is definitely one that I would put as an answer to that question, communicating with people and letting people know how I felt. Because when I first became unwell, I didn't do that. So I know that's something that's important. Okay, so moving swiftly on to the next question. What should the people around you do if they notice you becoming unwell, Rachel?
For me, it's give me space. So the last thing that I will want is for someone to point it out to me, because then I go full into fight mode. I get very defensive, and it's not much fun. So it's kind of give me that space. What works for me really, really well is something called take up time.
Okay.
So it's when someone asks you a question, and if I'm feeling unwell, it could be the simplest of questions like, do you want a cup of tea? I can't give an immediate answer because my brain's frozen. So for me, it's like, ask it, but then leave it with me. So give me that take up time, give me some space, and then I'll probably go, yeah, no, cup of tea sounds great, thank you. But it's just one of those things that for me kind of works well. Another thing is kind of giving me something that's not focused on me. So again, this has had to be tweaked under lockdown conditions and working from home. But when we was working in offices, it would be stuff like, Rachel, can you come help me with this? Or do you want to come for a walk? Instead of saying to me, what's wrong? Or, come for a walk, you need to talk, kind of thing. Because again, for me, I go straight into fight, and it's like, I don't need to do that, please shoot. So yeah, kind of those different kind of things.
Yeah, I noticed that was quite interesting when you said you initially like a bit of space. For me, I'm completely the opposite, and I like to know that people are there. And so I like that. So it just goes to show we're all so different, and wellness action plans are completely unique.
Indeed, and again, like we said, in terms of peer support and sharing our stories, what works for me doesn't necessarily work for anyone else, but it works for me, and that's what the important thing is, isn't it? Is that actually this is a tool for us, and it's a tool for us in terms of managing sort of going forwards.
Yeah, with no right or wrong answers.
Absolutely.
It's just whatever you feel you need to put on there. So my last question for you today, Rachel, is what can you put in place that can minimise your triggers or support you?
Yeah, so for me, a wellness action plan. So actually having that in place and actually reviewing it,
Okay.
we can write these wellness action plans, Andrea, can't we? But if we don't review them sort of regularly, and life changes, things need to be tweaked and changed, that actually it's then not going to be a useful tool for us, isn't it? So being honest and open in that, like I said already, kind of looking at things like to-do lists and reducing those. What works for me in terms of working from home is that once I've finished work is making sure my environment doesn't have work in it, because I'm currently sat in my living room. So moving those different things there, ensuring that I'm sleeping, having pleasurable things to do and doing them, because if I'm on this sort of treadmill of, I've got to do this and I've got to do that, and then, just trying to find the smallest of things that can nurture me. And like I said before, take my foot off the pedal. It's okay. It's absolutely okay not to be okay. And it's okay to do all those things that I need to do in this moment. So, is there anything sort of different for you in terms of that?
Yeah, I mean, things that I can put in place, because I know that one of my things is not eating. What I would generally tend to do is, I know they're not great or all that healthy, but I'll buy several ready meals so they're in the freezer. And
Yep.
I'll also try really hard to have like a bedtime routine to help with my sleep. So, do the things that I know that are going to make it a lot easier for me to stick to the stuff that's not going right.
Exactly. And like you say, going back to our previous podcast on self-compassion, it's where we have that compassion, isn't it? You can go, okay, a ready meal. Might not be the best choice that I can make. However, having those stocked up in the fridge or freezer, is just something simple to put in the microwave, put in the oven, put wherever. And actually, you're getting something into you, aren't you? You're getting some food into you, as opposed. And it's using that self-compassion of, I'm doing what I need to do in this moment to get me through. And when I'm over this dip, or whatever you want to call it, when I'm through that, I'll go back to, eating healthily and stuff like that. But at this moment in time, this is what I've got to do. So thank you for that, Andrea. It wasn't too painful being quizzed there. So we also kind of asked the peer support workers if there are any tips on using a wellness action plan, and they came up with some really good things. And the main one really is to find a way to make your wellness action plan work for you. So as Andrea and I have just said, these are unique things. What works for me isn't going to work for other people, or it might do. And whilst we call it, we have called it a document at times, haven't we, Andrea? But if it's easier to put your wellness action plan in a spreadsheet, post it on a fridge, share it with all the family, then do that. Do what works for you. It might be easier to put it in a notepad along with quotes and photos that give you joy. And then it's easily to reach, in a handbag or a back pocket. That way, times when you need it, it's more easy to carry. Instead of going, wellness action plan, where is it? Or it's on my computer, but I haven't really got the motivation to fire that up, so I'm just not going to do anything with it. Having it to hand in whatever way works for you. Andrea, did you say to me earlier, or before we were coming on to do the podcast, are there apps you can have for this?
Yeah, there are. I found several apps that I've downloaded on my phone, and actually the questions that Rachel and I have just been reading out to each other, they come up, and then you've got space to actually write your answers on there. And for me, I've got my phone on me all the time, so it's so handy if something new springs to mind. So if I'm sitting on the bus, and I can just like pull it up and then I can alter it. So
Fantastic.
definitely, there's definitely apps out there.
Okay, we'll make sure we put something in today's podcast
Yeah.
notes, just in case that was something that you wanted. And it's also remembering, to put your wellness action plan into practice and review it regularly. Remove anything that's no longer relevant or working. So, like we said, lockdown is looming, or you might be listening to this whilst we're fully in lockdown. And it's then looking at it and thinking, okay, that was working previously. Restrictions are preventing me from doing this. How can I change it for it to continue to work for me? So, like we said, it's fluid, isn't it? And it kind of changes as life does, really. So we've come to the end of today's podcast. Thank you so much for listening. And we've kind of looked at wellness action plans and how they can be used as a recovery tool. We've shared peer support worker lived experience of using wellness action plans to support recovery. And all this talk about recovery, Andrea, our next podcast will be looking at the stages of recovery and how they work. So it all kind of goes in together, doesn't it?
Yeah, so you can find out more information on wellness action plans, including the wellness action plan apps that Rachel and I have just talked about, in today's podcast notes.
So you can refer to the Wellbeing Service if you're not already. You can do that by self-referral, and you can do so over our website or over the telephone. If you're currently having treatment within the Wellbeing Service and would like to have peer support, then please do speak to your therapist who can make the referral for you. Andrea and I would like to thank you for listening today and hope you'll be able to join us again for our next podcast, which, like I said, will be on the stages of recovery. So I'll just say goodbye. Goodbye.
And goodbye from me as well. Thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, and hopefully to join us again soon. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.